So I'm here with Seth Mann, our January Spotlight. How you doing, Seth?
I'm doing good. Heck yeah.
So how long have you been with Tennessee Tractor, and what originally brought you here?
Coming up on 15 years, hard to believe, but 15 years. What brought me here? I'd been working for a gentleman out of Little Rock, taking care of his duck hunting operations and his boats on the East Coast. And my dad got sick, and I was like, man, it's time for me to go home. So I came home. I didn't know what I was going to do. I graduated with a finance degree, so I just assumed that I would go sell the insurance or work at a bank or some kind of sales. And I happened to be out with a lady friend at Picasso one night, and we were getting ready to leave, and we walked past the table, and there's three guys sitting there, and I didn't know them. But the girl I was with knew him, and it was Jay Adamson, Justin Leach, and Lynn McCarver. And so we sat there and shot the bull with them for a little bit, and they were like, "Hi, have a seat, sit down," So ended up staying for a while. And Jay said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, funny you ask." I said, "I don't really do anything right now. I've been working for a guy, and I just moved home. Gonna look after Pops." And he said, "You ever thought about selling John Deere equipment?" I was like, "No, man, I don't know anything." I said, "I don't know anything really about farming." I had a granddad up in Kenton, and he was a gentleman farmer, if you will. He worked at Goodyear, but he farmed, I don't even know, maybe 100 acres, if that. So I knew, a little bit about it. And of course, just growing up in West Tennessee in general, you can't help but to know, a little bit about it, but not to the point where I think that, I didn't know anything, truthfully. Anyway, he said, "Well, meet me at Cracker Barrel tomorrow morning." I said, "All right, I don't have anything to lose." And I went and talked to him, and he said, "We got a sales job opening in Paris." He said, we talked about it and yada yada. And he said, "I want you to go to meet with Mitch Hobby." I'd never met Mitch in my life. And anyway, so I struck out and went to meet Mitch, and the rest is sort of history. And that was 15 years ago. Still here, thankful to be here. So that's how it all came about.
And you're at the Alamo store now. Have you always been at the Alamo store?
No, I was in Paris. Man, that Paris store was rough, and people that recall the Paris store before they built the new location. I was in Paris roughly 3 years, I believe, and I really enjoyed it up there. I'm glad I started up there. Mitch Hobby was wonderful, and not to say that at that time Chris Turnage or any of the other sales managers weren't awesome, but Mitch was probably a bit more patient, and like I said, I didn't know a whole lot, and so there's sort of I'm glad it worked out that way. And then I was up there, and Danny or Jay called, or Chris, and said, "Hey, would you like to come to Alamo?" And I knew that, that was. I was like, yeah, that would be a good move. And the main thing at that time, it was closer to my dad. My dad lived in Jackson, so Paris to Jackson was still a pretty good hike. And so I jumped on it, and so I've been here, I guess, 12 years roughly or so. So that's how it all came about.
And what do you enjoy about working at the Alamo location?
Oh, man. I've been here so long, and it sounds cliche, but, just coming to work with these guys. Of course, we have our squabbles like anybody else, would, especially when you've been around somebody so long. But man, it's there's several folks up here that have been here as long as I have and longer, and it's basically second family. Not to sound corny, but when you work with somebody that long, it's really nice. It's really cool. And to go a little further with that, it's funny, customers call and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm calling about an 8R310 tractor." I was like, "Yeah." And they'll say, "Well, no, what's your name?" I said, "My name's Seth Mann." And they're like, "Didn't you sell me a tractor back in 2013?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure did. How are you?" And he said, "But I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. It's odd to call a dealership and talk to the same person. That many years have gone by, and I think that says a lot about the management at Tennessee Tractor, and good place to be.
And then do you have a specific customer moment or story that really sticks with you?
No, I wouldn't say I have a particular moment. So sometimes, you think to yourself, what can I do to, help people? Or, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you question, what am I doing to help the world be a better place or something like that. And there's been several times when people are down in the field, or they're broken down and they really need to get something going, or whatever the case may be. And so there's times that you feel proud of, like, hey, that guy was going to be down for 2 or 3 days if we didn't go get this part for them, or if, hey, you're come up here and get this piece of equipment and run it for until we can get your stuff fixed. And they really appreciate that, and that's what it makes you feel good. Felt like you helped somebody. Yep.
And what are the biggest changes you've seen in the equipment or the farming industry just in general since you've started?
Well, everything has gotten pretty techy, compared to the, you hear some of these old timers come in here and they, I wish I could go back to an, a 8-row planter with, and just fill it up with seed and go. And I get that, because sometimes it can be a pain, like some of these cotton pickers, if there's one sensor that's not working correctly, it shuts the whole machine down, or, and so it can be frustrating. But the tech side of it for sure is, I would say, and obviously bigger and faster, which is a good thing, but at times it can be frustrating for sure.
And what do you like to do when you're not at work?
Man, I love to spend time with my wife, and I've got 3 grandkids that I adore. Never had any children of my own, and so I love those grandkids. And I love to fish. I got a place at Sardis Lake, and I pretty much go every weekend, and I crappie fish, and so that's basically it. Hang out with the wife and grandkids and crappie fish. I used to hunt all the time, and sort of got away from that, and still enjoy it from time to time. But yep, that's it.
And then do you have any advice to anyone that would be looking at a piece of equipment for the first time, never bought a tractor, just what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, so I'm biased, obviously, because I work at a dealership. I was talking to a gentleman, a good customer of ours, literally, I believe it was last week, and we were talking about a sprayer. And he says, Seth, I found a sprayer exactly what I want, and I've got one as well. And he says, Seth, it's, I think, $20,000 cheaper than yours. And he said, it's going to be hard for me not to buy that one. And I said, hey, I understand. And my rebuttal, if you will, was when and if that sprayer has issues, as this auction company that you're looking at, this sprayer, are they going to bring you a demo to run? Are they going to come fix your piece of equipment? Are they going to stand behind it? And so I tell people, even if you're not going to buy a John Deere piece of equipment, you want to buy something that's from a reputable source, and so that sort of sums that up. I would just make sure you're getting it from somebody that will hopefully take care of you.
And then to finish us up, do you have anything to add just to your family, to your friends, to your customers, to your coworkers?
No, not really. Man, it's been a great 15 years. I hope I'm here a lot longer. I know the ag world is a tough place to be right now, and I'm just super thankful for Jay and Mr. Danny and Mitch, and Chris, and they've stuck with me for a long time. And I'll tell you this story. Mr. Larry Joe Cook, he was a salesman up at Paris. I said Mitch sort of taught me the ropes, and he certainly did, but Mr. Larry Joe had been at it a long time. He worked for Vincent for years, and I liked old Mr. Larry Joe. And but Mr. Larry Joe, he got cancer, and went downhill pretty quick. And I remember he needed to go to MD Anderson, but he was in pain pretty much 24/7. And at that time, I'm not sure who all was involved. I know Danny Marbury was, and I'm sure Jay was, and I'm sure other people were as well. But they got him. They got him to MD Anderson, and without having to, I guess, fly a commercial plane. And anyway, Mr. Larry Joe, he passed on, but I never forget. I was telling my dad that story, and my dad, he told me, he said, "Son," he said, "you better stay there as long as they'll have you." He said, "I've been working at the hospital for 39 years, and he said, people just don't do stuff like that." And he said that that's pretty extraordinary for an employer to take care of an employee like that. So that sort of sums up what it's been like working here, and just super thankful. Yep.
Well, thank you, Seth. We appreciate you and everything you do for Tennessee Tractor.
Good deal. Thank you. I appreciate it.